Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your Inside the Black Box Part 2, Fathers Attendance and Fatherhood Programs webinar. All lines have been placed on a listen-only mode, and the floor will be open for your questions and comments following the presentation. If you should require assistance throughout the conference, please press *0 on your telephone keypad to reach a live operator. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to your host, Jessica Pearson. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. I direct the Center for Policy Research and co-direct Fatherhood Research Practice Network. I want to introduce my colleagues at FRPN, Jay Fagan, Temple University, Rebecca Kaufman, also of Temple, and Nancy Fonis of the Center for Policy Research. So FRPN is a 5-year cooperative agreement to Temple University and CPR, funded by the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation, targets fatherhood researchers and practitioners in a variety of programs serving low-income fathers, non-resident fathers, both OFA and non-OFA grantees. And we have multiple goals. One is to promote rigorous evaluation, and to that end, we've awarded 13 grants to research practitioner teams for various studies of fatherhood programs, and we have 2 of the 13 studies are concluded and have been posted on the website. One will be posted in the next several weeks, and they are available on the FRPN website for you to review. We have then 10 other project studies up there that will be appear on the website, along with our own in-house research on outcome measures and co-parenting interventions. Another goal of FRPN is to build evaluation capacity, and that's part of what we're doing today with our quarterly webinar series, and also certificate programs and briefs on various topics for practitioners and researchers, and then we try to disseminate research results and best practices, again, through the FRPN website. So why are we doing a webinar on father's attendance? We've picked this topic because many research studies and practitioners tell us that fathers have low to moderate rates of attendance in fatherhood programs. This is a source of concern about both the benefits of the programs, the outcomes they experience, and the effectiveness of programming. Continuous quality improvement efforts rely on the collection and analysis of reliable and attendance information. We've reviewed the literature, and there are many ways to measure attendance. It's not always clear which way is best. There are, from some studies, we find clear evidence that fathers' attendance affects outcomes for fathers and families, but relatively few studies have looked at attendance in relation to outcomes. They may look at outcomes for the entire sample of fathers that are in their studies, but they don't look at fathers with broken down by different dosages or different attendance dosages, and there are differences that surface when that type of analysis is performed. And finally, we see that some strategies may improve attendance, and we're hoping that those can be highlighted today and potentially replicated if it's relevant and feasible. I want to let you know that the webinar, today's webinar, will be recorded and posted on our website along with these slides. And we have also posted a brief that we prepared that summarizes this research information, and it's available on FRPN.org. So we have a fabulous group of practitioners to help us with today's webinar. Kirk Berry of People for People in Philadelphia, Guy Bowling, who's Workforce Development Manager, Goodwill Easter Seals in the Father Project in Minneapolis, and Brenda Oyer, who is Associate Director of Research and Data for the Ridge Project. And they will be responding to some discussion questions as we go through. And my colleague, Jay Fagan, will be starting us off with a little bit of a research overview. But first, I'm going to ask our panelists to give us a little, to tell us a little bit about their programs. So, Kirk, introduce us to People for People. Hello?
I think Kirk must be muted, Jessica.
Hello, no, I'm here.
Okay. Can you do a little introduction about People for us?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kirk.
Hello, everyone. This is Kirk Berry out of Philadelphia with People for People Incorporated. I've been instructed to let you know that we're in Philadelphia, the home of the Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, seriously.
I was instructed to say that for any fans that are on the phone, and we're happy for Philadelphia and the fans of Philadelphia. People for People is a nonprofit organization. Fatherhood program is called Project Dad, and we are a community-based program that runs Monday through Thursday from 10 to 2. And so the population of fathers that we serve are non-custodial, and 98% of them are not working. These non-custodial fathers are 18 and older and come from low-income houses that possibly receive cash assistance or TANF or SNAP. And so the services that we provide obviously are responsible parenting, healthy relationship, and economic stability. And the curriculums we use to provide those services are the Prep Inc. Within My Reach for our healthy relationship. We use Fragile Families, the Young Fatherhood Development Curriculum with Dr. Johnson and MPCL. And then our economic stability curriculum is something that we've created called Preparing for the Working World. And it's a soft skills curriculum teaching the fathers very basic things that they need to help them be gainfully employed. We have 8 family workshop sessions, and we have 20 economic stability sessions, and our fathers come for 8 weeks total, Monday through Thursday. And so that's it for our introduction.
Okay, thank you. Guy, what's going on in Father Project in Minneapolis?
All righty. Thanks again to everyone listening, and thanks again for having this opportunity. My name is Guy Bowling, and I am the Workforce Development Manager for the Father Project, a program of Goodwill Easter Seals, and I promise, Kirk, I would not contribute to the pattern, but we are the host of the Super Bowl 52, most recently. I work with low-income, non-custodial dads and some moms who face barriers to supporting their kids, such as anything from life instability to child support issues, unemployment, underemployment, criminal background challenges, educational deficiencies. We serve fathers from 17 to 45. Last year we had about 300 dads enroll in our program. About half of them were African American. I'd say our highest population are African American. Also, about 20% of them were Latino, and then we have also about 15% Native American. And then we do have some other culturally specific populations, such as Southeast Asian, East African, and then we have Caucasian dads as well. The average age of our dads is about 33 years old. About 30% of them lack a high school diploma, and about half of them are ex-offenders, and the majority of them have a criminal background. And I would say all of them are low income. About 90% are non-custodial parents. Some of the services we provide is individualized case management, job placement, retention, advancement, community resources, job training programs, and then we do some program-specific pieces as it relates to them being parents. And so we offer parenting groups and father-child activities, peer support. We develop them as leaders. We also have child support and legal services, and all these services are under one roof. Our goal is to hopefully have an impact and increase their involvement in the lives of their kids. So we've been around since 1999, and so we've had a number of federal grants that have sustained our work. So that's a little bit about our program.
Thank you. And Brenda, what's the Ridge Project about?
Okay, thank you, Jessica. So I just want to say thank you to Jay and Jessica for the opportunity to be a part of this webinar, as well as for the opportunity to have been an FRPN grantee. And so our fatherhood curriculum is called Tyro Dads, and Tyro Dads is comprised of 10 two-hour workshops. So it's a total of 20 workshops, and those are delivered over 5 weeks. So we generally deliver that two workshops per week. Tyro is a Latin term, and it means apprentice, novice, someone learning something new. So the idea is that we are working with fathers who are learning to be fathers and learning to be men and learning a lot of new life skills. The curriculum was created by our co-founders and our co-executive directors, Ron and Kathy Tiarina, and it was actually created based out of their own personal experience with Ron's 15-year incarceration. And so one of the things that we feel is a unique attribute of our program is the fact that it was based on their personal experience and insights into incarceration. In addition to promoting responsible fatherhood, Tyro Dads also helps participants recognize the thinking patterns that have limited their successful, and it helps them adopt new ways of thinking that will help them to be successful as fathers, as husbands, as co-parents, as well as be successful in their workplace and communities. So not only does it provide parenting skills, but it also provides personal transformation that helps bring people who have struggled in the past to bring them hope, a brighter future, and hope is a really important part of our program. And so as a result of that hope, we help fathers be motivated to overcome the challenges that they experience in order to achieve their goals for themselves and for their children. So when a father completes our Tyro Dads program, he has the opportunity to receive what's called a Tyro pin, this little pin that they get placed on their lapel, and that actually represents his acceptance of a new identity as a Tyro, and that means he's a man of honor and integrity, and he embraces his role as a father as one of his highest callings in life. So as an organization, we began using Tyro Dads in prisons in 2006, and that's primarily where we've implemented Tyro Dads, but we have also done community-based programming. The community-based program has been with post-release fathers who have been released from incarceration, as well as regular low-income fathers who without a criminal history. And we've successfully served more than 8,700 fathers across Ohio by having that many number complete Tyro Dads over the past several years. So since 2011, we've provided Tyro Dads primarily to incarcerated fathers, and we've been in at least 35 inside locations such as state prisons, jails, community correction centers, and we've also provided Tyro Dads to low-income and formerly incarcerated fathers in at least 12 communities across Ohio. And another thing that we're really excited about is we also have 7 organizations separate from the Ridge Project who have adopted the Tyro Dads program and are implementing it, in 6 different states in America, and 1 organization in New Zealand is using TeraDad. So we are starting to go international. We're very excited about that. In addition to TeraDads, we offer couple communications classes, core communications classes, and Terra job ethics training. And but among those, TeraDads is definitely our foundational program, and it's prerequisite to the other programs. So we found that by providing TeraDads first, participants are able to be more successful in learning the skills and concepts that we teach in our other classes. So in addition to those curriculum classes, we also provide case management support and employment assistance, and a key feature of our employment assistance is our ability to help TeraDads completers obtain a pre-hire letter from our employer partners, and that pre-hire letter is a key for helping them obtain WIOA funding for training in high-demand jobs such as CDL training. So that is the TeraDads program.
Thank you. Well, we're now going to ask Jay to give us tell us what the research literature says about measuring attendance, analyzing attendance, and rates of attendance. So, Jay?
Yes, thank you, Jessica. And good morning, good afternoon to everybody who's joined us. So before I just move into some discussion about how attendance is measured, which is what you see on the slide here, we have reviewed the literature, both published and unpublished reports, and surprisingly few studies actually include measures of attendance. So we came up with a fairly small number. Some of those reports do report attendance levels of fathers, but then don't look at how it might be related to fathers' outcomes or family outcomes. So we see that as a pretty significant gap in the research literature and studies that are available as of right now. So just to move on to how attendance is measured, there are a number of different ways to measure attendance. It's not entirely clear which is best. Perhaps as time goes on and there are more and more studies, we'll have a better sense of what are the best approaches to this. So one approach is to look at the number of sessions attended. And we strongly recommend that programs and evaluators record number of sessions of all types of services being provided to fathers. This may be attending a parenting curriculum, case management sessions. Very important to measure sessions attended in all these different types of activities. Second is number of overall hours of workshop attendance. So when a father attends, he signs in at the program, gives the time when he arrives, and he does the same when he leaves, and that enables the program to come up with some type of assessment of hours of attendance. Third is number of hours of participation in specific content areas. For instance, content focused on co-parenting. This is a little bit more challenging. One needs to know, for example, if a father attends a particular session, how much time is devoted to parenting content. But this can be very useful if there are multiple content areas that are being covered at a given time when the father is participating. The fourth is number of modules completed. This is used when the program is divided into specific learning areas. So for instance, perhaps fathers are being taught how to hold a baby, and that may be one learning module that he completes. And there may be opportunities for him to complete that module at different time periods. And the next one is number of service activities. This can involve adding up all activities attended by the father. For instance, there may be different types of employment activities that fathers participate in as they're receiving services, employment support services from the program. And the last is number of fathers who complete the program or graduate. This requires the program and the evaluator to have a definition of what is meant by completion or graduation. So I'm going to go on to the next slide here. So in terms of selecting methods to assess attendance, You might measure hours per content area when workshops or classes cover multiple areas. So for example, some programs have fathers attend an entire morning, perhaps several times per week. And the morning may be divided into different content areas. And if one is going to try to get a sense of what really is having an effect on fathers, it might be really important to see how much content hour-wise fathers receive in, let's say, co-parenting versus parenting education. You might use number of sessions when each session has a clear and distinct focus. So this typically would be done when, let's say, you're evaluating the effect of a curriculum, and it's fairly straightforward to count the number of sessions that fathers attend based on that curriculum. You might use number of modules completed when the fatherhood curriculum is incorporated into a broader program. We know of some home visiting programs where, for instance, the father might complete a module specifically geared towards fathers, but then he may also participate in the rest of the home visit, and so it's important to have a sense of whether he has completed that module. Use number of services or activities pursued as part of an effort to obtain employment. This, again, can involve kind of keeping track of all the different types of activities fathers complete in an attempt to obtain employment. And use number of fathers who complete minimum number of classes or services needed to graduate. For example, when completion of the program leads to a specific outcome for the father. So we know there's some programs, for instance, where they have to complete parenting classes before they move on to an employment certificate program. So that would be an indicator of how it's important to have a measure of completion or graduation. I'll talk a little bit about analysis of attendance data. There are, again, a number of different approaches. You can look at the mean level of sessions or hours attended. One of the downsides of means is that it's affected by extremes. So we know that in many fatherhood programs, fathers attend 0, perhaps 1 or 2 sessions, but then there may be fathers who attend a large number of sessions, and so the mean would be somewhere in between those two, and that may not very accurately or be a very good reflection of how many sessions fathers are actually attending. A better approach might be to look at the median number of sessions or hours attended, less affected by extremes. This involves knowing sort of how many sessions occur in which about half or 50% of the fathers attend fewer than that number, and 50% of fathers who attend more than that specific number, and that gives you a median number of sessions. An approach that I happen to like is to divide attendance into categories such as low, medium, and high, or another way of looking at that is none, partial, and full. This requires an evaluator to look statistically, to explore statistically what might be a low, medium, and high level of attendance. I think this approach can be very useful for programs who might be able to think it might just make sense to know what is regarded as low, medium, high, and there may very well be differences in outcomes for fathers who are high attenders versus the other groups, but there may also be differences between those who are medium attenders versus those who are low attenders, and so I think that can be very useful. We know that some programs like the Parents and Children Together, the PACT evaluation, reports percentage of fathers who attend 1/2 or more sessions. And again, that's another way of analyzing the data. And as I said before, there's also the percent that graduate. So for instance, Brenda Oyer's program, the RIDGE program, considers a graduation to be attending 8 out of 10 total sessions. I'm going to go to the next slide here. So just to talk about rates of attendance as reported in the literature, as reported in studies. One thing, and I mentioned there are relatively few studies that are available that look at attendance, but those that are show that there's quite a bit of variability. There's some studies that show higher levels of attendance and some that show pretty low levels of attendance. So, for instance, fathers attended about a quarter, so 3 out of 16 possible sessions of the DADMAP curriculum at the Center for Urban Families, and that's based on a study that we funded that's going to be available on our website very shortly. So there's relatively low level of attendance, but that's an average. Remember, there were fathers who attended quite a few more sessions, and then some fathers who attended very, very few. Fathers in community sending, so the Tyro Dads program that Brenda has been talking about, fathers attended in half of 10 possible Tyro Dad sessions. That's at the Ridge Project. But interestingly, about 40%, almost half, a little under half, attended 8 out of 10 sessions. Those were the graduates. So even though there was only the mean was half the sessions, there was a substantial number of fathers who actually graduated from the program. And then other evaluations, such as the Center for Policy Research evaluation of an employment-focused program for child support, found that about a third did not participate at all. A little less than a quarter, less than a quarter participated at low levels, and a little under half participated fully. So you can see here from these findings that there is a pretty wide variation, pretty wide range of attendance rates. And that actually suggests that it really is very important for us to measure attendance levels as we're doing evaluations of programs. And the last program, the People for People Responsible Fatherhood program in Philadelphia, that's Kirk Berry's program, they've reported that 70% of their fathers who start the program attend all sessions, which consists of 28 sessions over 7 weeks. So that's People for People has high rates of attendance. Okay, Jessica, take it from here.
Okay. Now we want to hear from our practitioners about their experiences with measuring attendance, kind of attendance levels they get, how they how they use this information. So, Guy, start us off with the Father Project and your experience with attendance.
Yes, absolutely. Always a fun subject. What I didn't get an opportunity to mention earlier is the curriculum that we use for our parent education groups. We use parents as teachers, young moms, young dads curriculum that they have. We also use Thinking for a Change, MDRC, and Prep Inc. Within my reach, both in Spanish and English. And then we also use the Prep Inc. on my shoulders for our leadership group once our fathers complete the initial 12 weeks. And so our measurements, we have an open-ended group format in terms of how we track our attendance, and so we track it towards the completion goal. So there's a goal of a dosage of attending 12 sessions. Actual statistics, we don't really use that. It's not something we've done, but we think that there's an advantage in the way that we do it because it's open-ended, it's open entry, and it can just join when their crisis is happening for them based on when they sign up for the program, and so we don't have it to where it's consecutive and you have to join at a certain time, so it's open-end, open entry. And then there's flexibility of rapid engagement into programming, and so but we also can expedite that dosage in terms of our completion goal of 12 weeks by offering multiple group sessions during the week at different days and times just based on the dad's schedule, what he's capable of doing, and then also the different dates and times of the weeks are different topics, and so he can still be able to increase his dosage by attending a couple of groups a week. But unfortunately, the disadvantage is we don't build on a topic from week to week, and it's definitely not sequential. We haven't used unfortunately, a more advanced ticket because it's hard to measure change and impact beyond the pre- and post-self-reported data. So that's one of the disadvantages. But one of the ways we record attendance is we use GoodTrack, which is a database organizationally provided through our parent organization, Goodwill Industries. And also, too, we capture that along with records of what topics are covered from week to week, and then some examples in terms of how we use the attendance information. We might get a requests from the courts in terms of this guy's level of involvement, be it child support, be it criminal court, and then also, too, we use that for recommendations where these gentlemen are applying for housing and applying for jobs, and so those letters of recommendation in terms of what they're doing, and then they're working with the holistic program, addressing a number of different issues and barriers that they have. That usually is beneficial to those guys to say that they've been involved in our program, and so that's just a little bit of information in terms of how we measure our attendance and some of the advantages and disadvantages, and actually how we use that information.
Okay. So you're using, so the goal is 12 sessions. If someone does 10 out of the 12, you'd put down, you'd record 10 sessions.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Or 8 or 12.
Right. The goal is to have them.
Non-sequential, right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But I'll share more about why we established that, but that's what the goal is. Okay, we'll get to it. Yeah.
Super. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, Brenda, Jay stole a little bit of your thunder by giving some stats before, but tell us about your measure, how you measure attendance and record it, and the benefits of this measure you use.
Sure. Thanks, Jessica. So, yes, as Jay mentioned, to be considered a Tyro Dads completer, the fathers need to attend a minimum of 8 out of 10 workshops. And so we measure attendance based on workshops, which are session attendance. And also, we actually require that in order to continue in the program, or at least to be able to be eligible for completion, that the fathers also need to attend the first 2 sessions. Actually, that's a new change that we've made since our project with FRPN, because we have discovered that those 2 sessions are really foundational, and if either of those 2 foundations are missed, it's really hard to for the remaining content to be grasped, and in terms of both the knowledge and the skills and the change, the transformation. And so currently we're actually requiring the first 2 sessions as to be part of the completion requirements as well. So it was sort of through trial and error that we found that through our experience, the fathers who attend 7 or fewer workshops, our facilitators get to know the fathers pretty well during classes, and just through that knowledge and observation, we saw that there was a difference between individuals that attended at least 8 sessions versus those who attended fewer. And so that is why at some point during our process of program development, we decided that 8 sessions was the minimum number to be a successful Tyro Dads completer. So the benefits of requiring that basically is that we as an organization are more confident that the participant has experienced a genuine change in his identity and in his motivation to be a responsible dad to his children. Another thing is that, as I mentioned earlier, when we assist Tyro Dads completers with getting a pre-hire letter, that's putting our reputation on the line. And so we have a reputation with our employer partners that they know that these fathers who have completed Tyro Dads have experienced a genuine change, and that they're going to make good employees. And so that's also a benefit to us, is because we know that we are putting out there individuals who have had a genuine change in their identity and motivation, and are going to serve their communities and their employers well. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about this probably in a future slide too, but we did also have noticed that our attendance levels are much higher when we provide Tyro Dads within prisons as opposed to out in the community, and we'll talk about that in a future slide. But we think that that's a really important distinction, and right. We use the attendance information first to identify basically those who are considered a successful completer and who have earned the title of Tyro. And then secondly, we use it to identify, we break attendance down like per location, and we look at, are there some locations that are really low compared to others, and then we can target that for for continuous quality improvement purposes to try to problem solve and identify ways to help improve completion rates at those locations that seem to be a little bit, lower than the others.
Okay, great, for quality improvement at multiple sites. What about, Kirk, what about people for people? You've got an enviable rate of attendance. Talk a little bit about how you measure it and how you record it, all that sort of thing.
Okay, People for People, we have a 8-week program, and so the fathers have to complete core programming. The core programming is the first 5 weeks. The fathers on Monday and Wednesday participate in their parenting and healthy relationship class, and on Tuesday and Thursday they participate in economic stability. And so for the first 4 weeks they're going back and forth every other class, kind of like a college schedule. The fathers have to attend all 4 days. They have to have perfect attendance each week for the first 5 weeks can be successfully completed, and that's the core programming. So what happens in 5 weeks, they've done 8 parenting and healthy relationship days, and they've done 12 of the economic stability days. And so the percentage that Dr. Fagan mentioned of 28 sessions includes weeks 6 and 7, where the fathers do 8 more economic stability days, but those are optional because they're training for certifications, but most of the fathers wind up taking those certifications. By requiring the fathers to have perfect attendance, there are some disadvantages to that. One of them is that over a 5 to 8 week time period, if a father finds employment and it's during the day, they most likely will not complete the program because they want to go to work and they need to provide for their families. The major advantage is that after attending our program, the same thing happens. We're able to get a father employed with one of our employer contacts, and we're able to talk about their attendance and how they were here every day. And so the percentage that Jay talked about, 70%, that's our completion rate. But to give you some current statistics, right now the cohort that we have, because we have a cohort model, so once it starts, no one else is allowed to come in until we finish the program. Our current fathers are in week 4, and their attendance rate for week 1 and 2, 57 out of 61 fathers had perfect attendance over those 8 days. That was a 93% attendance rate. And so by the time we get to the end of the 7 weeks, that can be anywhere from as low as 70 but as high as 85% of our fathers out of these 61 will have perfect attendance for the program. Some other disadvantages are that because we're Monday through Thursday, our main day for makeups are Fridays, and that is an administrative day for my team. So a lot of times they're crunched for trying to get administrative work because for whatever reason, if there's a Super Bowl championship and dads didn't make it to class on Monday, the only day they can make it up is Friday because the curriculum moves right along Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And some other advantages to that is that we see a major change in the fathers because them coming every day from 10 to 2, Monday through Thursday, it really allows them to change whatever habits they have that may have been keeping them from being a well-rounded father or seeking employment and being gainfully employed. And how our program records, what do we do when we record this attendance? We're using it to see, help our fathers to understand that them showing up every day makes a difference for when it's time to go to work. And we're also using it to see what changes of quality maybe we need to do in order to keep their interest, because our program is really about the quality to the father is what keeps the attendance rate so high.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about quality in a little later in the program. So, Jay, now, what does the research literature tell us about attendance, and what kind of factors help to explain it?
Yes. So first of all, why study? Why look at influences on attendance? What would be the value to doing that? And one purpose for that would be to, if we know what are some of the important influences on why some fathers attend and why others do not, then we can kind of target ways to better increase attendance. So that's why it can be important to look at some of the influences on attendance. And there are multiple influences on attendance, and I'll mention some of these in a second here. But I do want to say that some approaches to increasing or to having high levels of attendance may be appropriate for some programs, but not necessarily for other programs. And I think it's really very important to know the context of your program and of the fathers who attend those programs in terms of making decisions about whether one approach would work for your program or not. So, for instance, Kirk was talking about his program is a very intense program. It involves fathers coming, I believe you said 4 days per week. So it's multiple hours over a short period of time. And that seems to be very effective, but it may be effective with his group of fathers. Let's say if you have fathers who are mostly working, an intense program of that nature may not be very, very useful. So another possible influence on attendance are the different kinds of components, program components that fathers participate in. So we know, for instance, that if fathers, one way to possibly increase attendance in parenting classes is if fathers are also receiving case management. Those case managers may help get fathers to attend parenting classes at a higher rate. So that can be an influence. A third is how sessions are scheduled. Some programs have found that having sessions twice a week works better than having sessions one time per week. And I think the idea there is that fathers get into a good routine of coming to the program if they have to attend twice a week, whereas once a week they might not establish as much of a routine. Another approach is the sequencing of programs, and we've heard some of that already today, that, for instance, attending parenting classes, healthy relationship classes, employment, soft skills training, prior to, let's say, being in a certificate program where you're receiving some specific credential that can lead to better employment, that kind of sequencing can be very useful. Actually, you have to excuse me, but I teach college and university students. There is a social learning principle that's based on, and it's the idea that people who engage in high probability behaviors, it reinforces low probability behaviors. So high probability behavior might be obtaining a certificate, something that fathers would be very much an incentive to them, and that can work as an incentive to attend something that might be a little less desirable, such as parenting classes. Okay, so enough of that. Other influences, availability of fathers. We've seen that there's certain circumstances, such as fathers living in residential settings, where if the program is implemented in that site, it certainly can help with increasing levels of attendance. Program quality, I think some of our speakers have spoken about how important the quality of the program is, including staff experience, how well the program is organized, that fathers are going to value that. That's a high value and certainly can have an impact on levels of attendance. Incentives. There are different types of incentives, monetary incentives. Some programs use monetary incentives. Another incentive might be breaks from paying child support, etc. Then there are those mandated programs. Now, I just want to mention that mandated programs do not often also struggle to some degree, maybe not as much as those which are not mandated, but they also are challenged with getting fathers to attend the program. Availability of public transportation or reliable cars, that is certainly an influence on attendance. Programs offering food and support to help fathers feel comfortable when they're in the program, those serve as important incentives. Having strong relationships between program staff and fathers, critical to fathers' attendance. Also, bear in mind that how long the program is, how many sessions fathers are required or supposed to attend can have an influence on attendance. There are some very long programs. Some of them do last for up to 6 months or a year, and very lengthy programs might show a decline in attendance as fathers because it's very challenging to attend that number of sessions. And then opportunity to make up missed classes can have an influence on attendance rates. Okay, going to move on to the next slide here. So just highlighting a couple of these influences just to show you how they might come into play. So in terms of intensity, the PAC study found that fathers who attended an intensive program model received twice as much parenting content compared with fathers who attended programs that met weekly. So that certainly is encouraging for notion of greater intensity. And Brenda has talked about the RIDGE program requires the participants in its Tyra Dads program attend 8 out of 10 sessions in order to access work incentive type of activities. That would be a sequencing issue. Another study, the Fathers and Sons study, that's a project taking place in Flint, Michigan, and now in Chicago, found that attendance improved when classes were offered 2 times per week rather than 1 time per week. And again, these are just examples of some of the points that I was making a few moments ago.
Great, thank you. More of this is spelled out in the brief. I just want to clarify one thing about child support incentives. The most common one and effective one is reinstatement of driver's licenses for those who've been suspended for non-payment. It's typically not ending payment of child support. There may be some minimum payment while program participation, but the child support license reinstatement is a powerful incentive we found in some of our studies. So now our panelists, starting with Brenda, are going to briefly talk about why they think they get the attendance rates they get. Brenda.
Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned previously, the majority of our Tyra Dads classes are implemented inside of prisons, and I'm not going to go into that in detail, but I do just want to mention that is when we talk about how population served affects attendance. That is a really good example for our organization because it is much easier for us to have much higher attendance rates inside of prisons than outside of prisons. But we have served community-based fathers under the FRPN grant and under some of our previous grants, and for example, under the FRPN grant, a distinction between the population, so within the population served under that grant, many of the participants were in halfway houses and some were not. And so we did notice that, for example, halfway house participants' participation was higher and basic than those who are living out in the community with family or outside of a halfway house situation. And some of the reasons that we found for that are many of the ones that Jay just mentioned. For example, individuals who are not living in a halfway house might have had transportation barriers. They just didn't have a way or consistent way to make it to classes. They were also more likely to have gotten a job, and so employment virtually always is going to take a priority over a parenting class. And also it's just more difficult for us to contact individuals who are not living in a halfway house. Their addresses might change frequently, their phone numbers might change frequently. It's just a lot more difficult to stay in contact with them and to remind them, please come to our program. The halfway house participants on the flip side, the classes were provided at the halfway houses, so that transportation was not an issue. The halfway house staff could actually help remind and encourage the participants to attend the Tired Dads scheduled sessions. So having that support was also helpful. And to some extent, we were able to provide evening classes there, which was particularly helpful because usually they had to be back in the halfway house by a certain time of the day, and once they were in, then they were not allowed to leave, and we could offer classes, some locations, evenings, which helped a lot with the attendance as well.
So it's kind of a semi-captive situation.
Correct. Correct.
Great. What about you, Kurt? What kind of factors you think explain your attendance rate?
The first factor to explain our attendance rate is a cohort model. So fathers start and end together. Why that is important is because I believe that for the fathers, they hold each other accountable. They may not know each other in the beginning, but as they progress along, they are the ones that will reach out to each other. They're the ones that push each other through. They're the ones that when they go on break, they uplift each other. These are all things that we've seen and heard, but we may not actually participate in. But that's what helps our attendance. We believe that the cohort model has a lot of value to it when it comes time to, if I haven't seen Dr. Fagan, maybe he's one of my fathers, maybe the other father that's his friend can reach out and find them for us when we need to reengage someone. And so it's been really helpful for us as a grantee we started with the cohort model, and we've seen a lot that benefit from it. The other reason is our program's from 10 to 2. And because we work with fathers who are non-custodial, that doesn't mean that they're not engaged. And so a lot of our fathers drop their kids off and pick their kids up from school, and 10 to 2 is a perfect time for them to attend and come every day. Since 90% of our fathers are unemployed, this also works for them to have a program that's a cohort model and that's every day because it pushes them towards employment and being productive and being ready for that job. And then the program policies regarding attendance, the fathers are not eligible for any of the incentives that we have if they don't have perfect attendance. So they're not eligible for gift cards, and they're definitely not eligible to participate in the job training certifications that we have in weeks 6 and 7. And then fathers with perfect attendance, they understand that by doing this, it'll make them more successful as they move on from our program.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Guy? What do you attribute your attendance rates to?
Wow, you guys have really covered most of the stuff that we do as well. So I echo some of the sentiments that's already been shared. But I would have to say, in thinking about the question, the population actually you're serving, does it affect your attendance? I think it's, and for us and our experiences in working with our fathers over the years, is easier to leverage attendance if, it's part of someone's probation release plan. We tend to serve many more individuals where that's not the case. So due to the voluntary nature of our program, it may be sporadic and we don't require attendance. We do require goal establishment and completion because notice that we want to foster the motivation to attend over time. We believe dosage is important, no doubt, and giving a lot of content on the front end, but also the fact that what we've learned is time is needed to process the information, and making some of the learnings a part of their 30-day fatherhood plan that we develop with them based on the goals that they've established, the goals that we've established, and the requirements to participate in that program. But also we have some of those things developed to integrate into their life experience, because we think that too much of it on the front end does not really help, in our opinion, and it doesn't really help the change process. The transformation needs to occur over time that we have seen, and these guys are transformed. So we require these guys to come at minimum, even of the 12 weeks that we have for them, we require them to come to a group at minimum at least once a month, and they can come to more, and if you offer more, they will. But again, it's back to it being voluntary and really creating a buy-in with these men to participate in the program. But we also, in terms of policies, we want to make sure that they're attending the right group at the right time, so we offer multiple ways to be able to do this. So it depends on what their crisis is, because most of these guys who come to our program, something has impacted their ability to function. And you have to address that first before you do anything as it relates to requirements for your program. So we address that, and then as a trade-off, we say, well, if we address this and we're able to help you with this, we need you to participate here because we feel that this will going to benefit you in the long run, especially as it relates to parenting and employment. And so we do address their crisis situation as well. And sometimes the group that we have, as far as how we evaluate their success in our program, we may not offer that to them right away, depending on what. If they're dealing with a housing issue, chemical dependency issue, employment issue, to say, hey, come to a parenting class on a weekly basis may not be the right time to do it. But over time, we do encourage them to participate. And so it just depends on what the situation is. We don't have a formal policy. It's all really based on what impacted them to come in, what motivates them to continue, and then we develop their plan around those areas.
Okay, thank you. Jay, quickly tell us what the research shows about the impact of attendance on outcomes.
Sure. So to start with, there are, as I've been sort of emphasizing earlier, very few studies and reports that have actually looked at the effects of attendance on outcomes for fathers. And in fact, it says here 5 out of 6. We actually found one additional study. We found that only, in our review of the literature, only 6 out of 7 studies, well, there were 7 studies that looked at outcomes based on how much fathers attended the program. And so that's a very small number. There are other studies that have not addressed the effects of attendance on fathers' outcomes. Generally speaking, out of those studies, all but one showed that how involved fathers are, how higher levels of attendance are associated with better outcomes for fathers. There was only one study that did not show better outcomes related to higher levels of attendance. So, for instance, a Center for Policy Research study found that full participation in economic security program is associated with higher rates of jobs, of earnings, and child support payment. The study that Brenda Oyer that FRPN funded, that's the Tyro Dads study, there were some very interesting findings, and I would really encourage you to take a look at that report on our website. That study found that participation in Tyro Dads had better effects on fathers than fathers who were in a wait-listed group. So they had to wait to attend the group, and they were being compared to fathers in this experimental group. But when the researchers looked at attendance at dose, they found that fathers who attended 8 out of 10 sessions showed gains in quite a few more different types of outcomes than were evident from just looking at the comparison of the experimental with the control group. And so just to explain that a little bit more clearly, the overall study that when attendance was not looked at showed that fathers showed improvement in parenting satisfaction and in their sense of self-efficacy. But when the researchers looked at this at dose, and for fathers who attended 8 out of the 10 sessions, they found that there were improved outcomes in co-parenting. There were improved outcomes in fathers' commitment to the role as a father. And there were improved outcomes in fathers' engagement with their children. So while the comparison of the two groups without any attention to attendance showed some positive effects, there were more and stronger effects on outcomes when dose was looked at. So based on studies like this, I would strongly suggest that researchers and programs look at attendance effects on outcomes. But there are some things that folks need to keep in mind. It is possible that attendance in a fatherhood program is really explained by some other factors. It may be that fathers who attend more sessions, and there's probably some validity to this, are more motivated fathers. They may be more motivated to participate in the program. They may be more motivated as fathers. So it's very possible that attendance is really measuring motivation, and that's something that that in the future we should try to figure out. It is possible, however, that attendance has a positive effect regardless of father's motivation. And again, these are things that we need to try to figure out in the future as we study programs. And just one last point here is that I had mentioned earlier that it's important to look at attendance in all types of fatherhood programs and activities when looking at effects on the program. So for instance, the study that was done of the Center for Urban Families, that's Bright Sarfo's study, he found that it mattered if fathers were attending an employment support class above and beyond the effects of participating in a fatherhood curriculum. So it is important to look at attendance in all those different types of activities.
Great. I'm going to actually advance in the interest of time and ask you to continue, Jay, to talk about the research on ways to improve attendance so we have enough time for our panelists to really give their advice on attendance strategies and then have enough time for questions. So what did we find in the literature about how to improve attendance?
Right. I'll go through these very quickly because I know you want to.
We're going to have time. We have time. Okay.
Okay. So one is offer transportation assistance, things like gas cards, bus tokens, etc. Second is offer valued employment and child support incentives, access to employment job programs, subsidized jobs, driver's license reinstatement, and state debt forgiveness. These can all be very powerful incentives. Third, maximize program intensity through scheduling and sequencing, if that is a possibility, again, considering the context of your program and of the fathers who are attending. Fourth, and this is something that should be addressed by all programs, and that is building strong staff relationships with fathers. It's really a key to any kind of effective program, both in terms of outcomes and in terms of getting higher levels of attendance. Fifth, we didn't really talk about this much, reminder calls, texts, calls like we missed you calls, home visits. There's been quite a bit of attention recently on trying to use these methods to increase attendance. FRPN has funded one study in which the researchers are sending texts to fathers as a means of trying to encourage greater attendance, and we're really eager to see what the results of that study. That's a study that's being done at Stony Brook University. And then coordinating with courts to monitor father participation where appropriate is likely to have an impact. Keep the number of class hours and service requirements to realistic levels based on the needs of fathers and their lives. Next is schedule program classes at times and locations that are convenient for program participants and offer make-up opportunities. Sometimes not so easy to figure out when is the best time. It's for some fathers daytime, for some fathers evening, weekend, but to the extent that there's greater flexibility when programs can be offered might have a positive impact. And then again, probably one of the key elements here is offering high-quality programs.
I want to turn to the panel now, and we'll start with Kirk to talk about recommended strategies to achieve high attendance, what you've tried, what's worked, what you're expending. Just be extemporize on all of this, and we can take a little bit of time with this because I think this is going to be of interest to a lot of our audience.
All right, thank you so much. At People for People, when we first started working with fathers on this HHS grant, we were a program that was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so we were going every other day. And that's what we tried, and what we realized is that fathers needed consistency. They needed no breaks, so we went to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then we also realized that when we went from Monday, Wednesday, Friday to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. What we realized is that whether the weather was nice or if it was really, really cold outside, on Fridays, if you weren't currently employed, Fridays it was just a 3-day weekend for you. So we have no classes on Friday, and we went straight from Monday to Thursday. So that was one of the things we tried. Also with incentives, one of the things that we tried is we would save all our incentives as far as gift cards to the fathers. We would save it to the end so that they would have one big goal. And that worked a little bit, but now what we do is every 2 weeks a father can earn a piece of the $200. And so we break it up into $4 $50, and it keeps them going. And it kind of works like a paycheck because they're getting it every 2 weeks. And so those are some of the things that we tried, and I'm also sharing what we changed to. And then as far as social media, we're able to not only share with the community what we do as a fatherhood program, but also if we haven't been in touch with the father, social media has really helped. And so our current team of case managers, when fathers enroll, we make sure that outside of just getting the phone number and the address or the email address, we're really trying to reach out to dad and find out what's their social media handle, that in the event, if there's a snowstorm and we're going to close, how do we let them know? And so fathers have been really willing to give that information, and so that's been helpful. But we didn't always have that in the past. We didn't have that 4 years ago when we were a grantee. And then as far as our attendance and strategies to keep attendance up, we're definitely one of the programs that believe in quality of service. And so what I mean by that is that when our fathers come here, we start at 10 and we end at 2, and there's no period in time where someone on the team is not aware of what they should be doing or don't have the tools or resources to do what they do. We understand that working with adults, time is very, very important, and so anybody that's facilitating a workshop should be in there and have a tight schedule that they keep the fathers to. So when it's time to go on break, the fathers get to go on break, but when they're supposed to come back, that workshop gets started with who's ever in the seats. And that really helps with attendance because the fathers understand that if they're not there, they're going to miss information, and it helps them become more successful as we prepare them for the working world. Great.
Thank you. Next up, Guy, what about what have you tried? What do you recommend? What should the field be trying to do?
Well, they say if you throw enough things at the target, something will eventually stick. We've tried a little bit of everything under the sun, so a lot of things that Kirk said. But I think the first thing for us, we created a streamlined process to even get into our program from the moment you call or you walk in or you set up an appointment, the application process, which leads to an orientation session where you have a one-day session provided with information about all the resources we provide, who would you be working with, what fatherhood plan would actually look like, and then give you an opportunity to be exposed to the people that would be doing the work with you based on what your issue is, and then give you a certificate at the end of orientation just to say, hey, you completed your first day. This is your first step into the program, and so do you want to join? Because we have a lot more resources for where these come from, and so it's really a way to recognize and acknowledge them from the very beginning of them coming into the program, and so we integrated that within our orientation in terms of just an incentive to keep coming, and then we also included an empowerment engagement piece within our orientation, I guess, get these guys motivated, thinking about why they want to join the program, what do they want to be for their kids, because we're a really parent-focused program. Other things we've done is we've had legal clinics, because we have legal services where you can get brief consultation or brief representation or full representation. So everybody doesn't qualify for those services because we only have a part-time attorney, but we decided that we needed to just have one-day legal clinics where guys could bring in their paperwork. We could help them fill it out. We did it on a Saturday. We provided some volunteer attorneys to be able to do that, again, addressing the issue on why they came. Other things we've done is, I think Jay had said earlier, texting. We've done Facebook contest challenges. Who on Facebook has a talent or art or music, and we say we're going to have a contest, and then we had a big recognition awards dinner where we was able to look at and choose from the best person who put together something that we all voted on and recognize them and gave them gift cards for it. I mean, that was just an incentive to be heavily involved, but also put them in a position to help recruit for us as well. That's an incentive to empower them to keep connecting with the program because they're telling somebody else. The other thing we've done is we've gotten a bunch of guys and bought all kind of T-shirts and canvas neighborhoods where we just walk down and passed out flyers. And we just walk through communities and just have presence of men. We had 50 men with T-shirts on walking through neighborhoods, and people initially were startled, like, what is this about? And then they found out that these guys were trying to recruit people for the program. And then we've done the gas cars, we've done home visits. We'll go to your house and we'll meet you there if you can't come in and sign up for our program. We'll come to your house. We'll come to your job. We've given out plaques for the first person that completes 12 groups. If you complete 12 consecutive groups, you get a plaque. So we've done that as incentives. So just a number of different things that we've done to really be able to increase our attendance. And I think once we realized that these guys are not always available during normal hours, we provided programming for these guys in evenings, daytime, and weekends, be able to serve these guys based on providing that level of flexibility too.
Thank you. That's interesting. We've seen other times that home visit meetings in the evenings have more father engagement. Of course, that's not the time that workers always want to work, but those are, and the legal clinics as an incentive is an interesting idea. I think other programs have found that. It's a rare commodity to get to talk to a lawyer. Brenda, what have you tried, and what do you recommend?
Well, we've tried many of the same things that have already been discussed. I think just to kind of piggyback on what Guy said, one of the things that Guy said is like at the beginning of both during recruitment and during the first couple of class sessions, really helping people try to understand, look a little bit long term, and what this program can do for themselves long term, and really try to help them understand that this can have a huge value in their lives and in the lives of their families. And so if we can get them to begin to understand that early on, then our experience is that after they attend 1 or 2 or perhaps 3 class sessions, then they're hooked. And so getting them to attend those first 2 sessions and really helping them understand that this is a life-changing program. This is a program that's going to do more than get me. And no disrespect for anybody and whatever their employment is, but this is going to be a job that's going to help me create self-sufficiency, not just work at Wendy's part-time, for example. Right. And so I think that's really important. And the relationships that we build with our partners, like for example in the halfway houses, those relationships were critical because those people can either be gatekeepers or gate openers. And so those relationships were critical because they can also help you encourage people to attend your program. And then I can't really overemphasize the importance of the strength of the relationship between the class facilitator and the participants. That really, I think, is what keeps people coming back. In addition to understanding, that this is going to be a program that helps me change my life for the better for myself and my family. So I will say that I don't think you can ever go wrong with food. So if you can afford food, that's especially early on in the program when you're getting people to attend. That's always a benefit. People really enjoy that. One other thing that's actually a new development in our program since we were involved in the FRPN study as far as our community-based program is we have sort of our own social media platform alternative to Facebook. It's called Tyro 365. And so in our community-based classes, we onboard our participants at the very beginning of the Tyro 365 because what that does is it allows them to engage pretty much 24/7 with their class facilitator. So between classes, it keeps them engaged. They can message their facilitator through that platform. But also, they can receive inspiration and motivation and encouragement from individuals who have already completed the Tyro program. Mm-hmm. And so we're real excited about that. It's difficult to implement that in prisons, of course, but in our classes that are community-based, we are very excited about the potential of that to help keep people engaged, at the early and all the way through the program. And then once they become a Tyro, then they're going to want to be on the platform encouraging the next generation of Tyros.
Thank you. Interesting. All right. This is the time when we're going to turn it back to the operator to give you instructions about how to dial in with your questions. So please do that. We have a good 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Could I just piggyback really quick?
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
What Brenda said. I think the critical piece to keep folks engaged, I think, is that relationship piece in terms of the staff and the actual program participants. Because I think if that relationship is developed and is strong and cultivated, then that's the incentive for them to continue and feel encouraged and motivated to continue to move through the process. I think that's critical. And I think within our program, we have the same person that does case management as also as the person that does and facilitates the group. So then they get to see them pretty regularly, one-on-one, and then in the group setting, where they also have peer support. And I think another piece that is critical is what Brenda also said is food. So people like to genderize it and go, men like to eat, and I like to say, no, everybody likes to eat.
Yeah.
With that being said, I just wanted to add on to those two pieces because I think those are critical.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, tell us how to get a question in.
Thank you. The floor is now open for questions. If you do have questions, please press *1 on your telephone keypad at this time. Questions will be taken in the order they were received. If at any time your question has been answered, you can remove yourself from the queue by pressing 1. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad at this time. Please hold while we poll for questions.
Okay. While somebody dials in, Guy, talk a little bit about the strategies for culturally specific populations. Do you see any differences there that we ought to be aware of?
Yeah, we developed a couple of things. You got to have culturally competent staff to reflect that population. I think that's number one. I think the other thing is you have to have relationships with collaborative partners that are culturally specific as well. So you have that. They vouch for you. They validate you in what you're doing, and so they're the ones that continue to build upon your reputation and working with that particular community, especially if you already have a relationship with them and they're supporting what you're doing. You're more likely to get referrals from them, and you're more likely to get some resources from them as well. So I think that's real specific. I think we work with also an East African population, and so they're a little different in terms of they are not necessarily willing to admit that there's a challenge within the household as it relates to the father fulfilling his responsibilities, and so you really have to go to the heads of the clan to be able to work with them to specifically be able to say how you can support them behind not only things related to workforce development, but on the parenting piece, especially if you have a parenting program. So that's some of the things we found to be differently. And then the Southeast Asian population, which is the Hmong population, a lot of folks that came from Laos during the Vietnam War, a lot of those folks, you have to go to the heads of their clans as well to be able to get in and establish a relationship, plus work with a collaborative organization that's already working with that community.
Gets complicated. Interesting. Do we have a question, or more should I be spouting questions?
There are no questions in the queue.
Okay. What about, Brenda, a lot of your community participants have parole mandates. And let's be aware of those and how that affects your attendance patterns. Talk about those for a little bit.
Sure, and actually this is a good reason to have really strong relationships. If you're serving ex-offenders, it's a really good reason to have a really good, strong relationship with your adult parole authority, because to the extent that they are allowed themselves to adjust parolee requirements, they can actually help promote participation in your program. So, when a person's on parole, they have different kind of requirements that their parole officer tells them they need to meet. And if they don't, there's going to be consequences and some kind of sanctions. There's a possibility they could even go back to prison. And so one of those tends to be you need to get a job, and you need to get a job soon. And so if that is what a participant is hearing from his parole officer, that's going to take priority. And if a ex-offender has to choose between getting and keeping a job to satisfy his parole officer and to not, and to stay out of trouble, and attending a class that is not required by the conditions of his parole, then it's obvious which one he's going to choose. And so, although I think it is possible if you have a really strong relationship with APA, that they could actually grant some concessions that will, as long as you're working toward employment with this project with Tyra Dads, we know that that's going to help you have good long-term outcomes, and we will give you a concession for that. So that relationship with the adult parole authority can be really, really helpful there.
Okay.
And then, Jessica, you had also mentioned about child support, which is, can also be a factor during parole. And so I thought that you addressed that very, very well. So those are just some things that that we need to be aware of that are barriers for people, because those are mandates. Those are priorities.
Right. Kirk, you've emphasized quality, and we sort of know it when we see it, but it's hard to know exactly what it is or how to measure it or track it or know who's providing quality services and who's not. How do you take that on?
So the first thing I'd like to say about quality of services, I'd like to ask every grantee, and I always ask myself, would you go to your own fatherhood program? Like, would you sit through the workshops? Would you use the services or the relationship, healthy relationship? At one time, I was a non-custodial dad, and now I have 50-50 custody of my daughter. And I would sit through the workshops that we teach within my reach and with the MPCL curriculum. And any part of it that I would not participate in, me as the director, I'm constantly trying to work on and make it a better experience. So when I think of quality of service, CQI is the term we like to use with research, continuous quality improvement. And so how do you know? Well, one of the reasons that I know that our program is good is because I would say over 80% of our program is word of mouth, and we know that it's directly from the fathers who are in the program. So currently we have a dad that's in the program who said, I heard about it from my father who was in the program. And so typically, or let me say my experience, I won't say typically, usually when I see something generational, they're pointing at the prisons. My father was in jail, my grandfather was in jail, but rarely have I heard that my dad came through your program and it worked and he's working, and so he told me about it, and I have a young son. So when I think of quality of service, I look at would I go through it? I look at those sitting in the seat. So if you're a grantee out there or a fatherhood organization, even if you only have 6 dads that come to workshops, are those 6 dads telling 1 or 2 other dads? Because that's the measurement of what you're doing and how well you're doing it. Because we all have different populations. So whoever we do serve, how can we give them the best experience, as I like to say, so that when they leave our restaurant, our hotel, or when they leave our barbershop or nail salon, that they go and tell another customer who wants good service, we should look at our fatherhood programs the same exact way.
Right. Jay, how can we parse out whether attendance is the same as client motivation? How would we kind of unravel this tangle of maybe antecedent factor, attendance, and outcome, stronger outcome?
Sure. I've been giving some thought to this, and to the best of my knowledge, I am not aware of any good measures of motivation to attend a program at this point in time. I'm kind of on a mission to try to find some good measures so that perhaps we can test them. But I do think it is something that needs to be examined, and examined in relation to outcomes for fathers, as well as looking at attendance, attendance outcomes. One of the issues with measuring things like motivation to attend a program is that oftentimes people will answer those kinds of questions because they think in a very socially desirable way. So they'll, just about everybody will say that they're highly motivated to attend the program. So it's sometimes hard to get a good reading of levels of motivation. But so we may need to sort of explore ways to measure it.
Okay. I guess practitioners, do you see that it's sort of underlying attitudes and personality types to both attend faithfully and get a lot out of a program, or can you, what's your perception? Is it predetermined in a way?
I guess I'll jump in on that, Jessica.
Yeah.
I think it does have. We also did a qualitative piece to our study, and so we asked the facilitators, some questions that tended to draw out those kinds of that kind of information about motivation, and and I do think I agree with Jay. I think it is very, very difficult to measure because, especially with self-report, we on a variety of scales, not just motivation. We tend to get a lot of high pre-survey responses that then make it difficult to show improvement. But apart from the measurement issues, some people just seem to be at a place in life where they are more ready than others. And age might actually be a really interesting factor there because, like at a certain point in time, even with age and maturity level, is it like, I'm really ready to shift gears in my life, and I'm starting to see where my life is headed. And I'm really ready to make a change, and this is a program that can help me do it, as opposed to, I'm not ready, or some people they're in so much crisis that they, even if they want to, they just can't quite get themselves to the point where they can regularly attend a class because of the crises that they're dealing with.
Yeah. We're going to stop it at that because we're almost at time. Contact us at FRPN. Both these slides that were shown today and the research brief will be up on the website, and the recording of this webinar will be posted within the next day or two and can be sent around and listened to. I want to thank panelists, Kirk, Guy, Brenda, Jay. We packed in a lot of information, and I hope people have found this useful. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next time for another FRPN webinar.